it's Sam, and I'm doing this forecast for the new moon in Capricorn that's happening on Sunday, February 8th, happening in the early morning, the exact Sun-Moon conjunction, and it's happening in Capricorn. So the new moon at this time is going to bring together Sun and Moon in Capricorn and start this cycle where we are going to be more introspective, facing our sort of inner fears, stresses, worries, and concerns. Capricorn is the reflective feminine quality of Saturn, which is the planet of our relationship to time and the effects of time, which has to do with pressure of time, the inevitability of time to destroy everything, how we remember the past and the problems of the past, the struggles of the past, and we don't want to repeat them, so we want to avoid making mistakes, avoid looking foolish, avoid looking silly. And these things create a lot of complexes in our mind and in our heart. And we really feel those complexes in our mind and heart in Capricorn. And so in Capricorn, it's the, as I say, it's the reflective feminine quality of Saturn, because the planets have a masculine and a feminine nature. The masculine nature of Saturn is expressed through Aquarius. The feminine side is expressed through Capricorn. So we have to go inward and really feel it and face it and, you know, transform it internally before we can then take that energy and express it externally. And so the Capricorn lesson is where we are learning to face our inner fears. What we typically do is want to manage and control and organize our outer situation as a way to feel safe against the encroaching inevitability of time. And if that sounds like this big kind of overblown thing, it's really not. Consider this for a second. Consider how much of your life is focused around being safe. You might say, well, you know, I don't know, I'm not sure about that. All right, well, you live near a food source. You make sure that you can get food. You make sure you have enough money. You make sure that you're not, you know, that you don't live in a dangerous part of town. You have a lock on your door. You might have a weapon to protect yourself. You're very careful to make sure that you're near a place where you can eat and drink and survive. It's a baseline kind of no compromise zone. And, you know, the awareness of that comes from Saturn. When people have a difficult Saturn or a weak Saturn, they often have a hard time keeping those things together, and maybe they wind up depending on others to take care of them, or their parents, they still live with their parents, or they still get money and safety and stability and security from others. If it's overdone, they might tend to want to control and manage everybody because they're afraid that those people that they love or those situations that they have are going to change, and they can't control it. And they want to try to protect their loved ones from danger and harm, maybe even to the point of manipulating them or interfering. These are all kind of within the parameters of what Saturn is about. So the reasonable limit of those things, and not just Saturn but also Capricorn, the reasonable limit of those things is what we're going to be, is what we experience in Capricorn, because again, it's the internal, it's reckoning with the feeling of it and the fears and that more psychological part first. And then once we do that, then we can share things more in the outer world. So most of us are stuck in some kind of pattern of avoiding things that we think are going to feel bad and all of that with Saturn, and so the Capricorn part of our life revolves somewhat around that. And instead what we need to do is, once we become mature about time and mature about the inevitability of time and that we can't really control things, and once we have a food source and money and all, then rather than just trying to keep managing everything, we need to actually turn inward and manage ourselves and calm those fears and connect with that peace and stillness and silence, which also comes from Saturn, then we evolve. So this is how the Saturn theme evolves, and how we must first encounter it through that stage of Capricorn. So this is why Capricorn is very good for things like meditation, introspection, solitude, silence, peace, stillness. That's the mature option. The immature option is being afraid to be alone, clinging to an immature version of life, where we want to make sure to have people around, and then we worry about them, and we feel sad and despondent when we're alone because we're not getting attention. And so we want to get some attention and then feel like we have this attachment to others through some kind of reflection rather than introspection and silence and peace. So these will be big themes for the next 30 days or so. And this this new moon is in Dhanishta Nakshatra. Dhanishta literally is related to Lord Shiva and the drum of creation, the mridangam, which he plays, and the creative principle of Lord Shiva and his drum, the drum of creation. You see Lord Shiva has a drum in one hand, and the drum is creating the music of the spheres, the music of the cosmos that brings this sacred vibration that manifests. And the word dhan from Dhanishta means wealth, but it also just means the results, the result of things. What gets produced, what is created by our energy. So Dhanishta can be very much about literally wealth. It's a good time to accumulate wealth, literally money. But as I just said, and as you can infer, this part of Capricorn, Capricorn can be quite a materialistic sign where we're just accumulating because we're afraid to live simply, and we can complicate our life and then be buried underneath the pressure that comes with a lot of stuff. Or we can live very freely and not be attached to all of these things. And that nakshatra of Dhanishta has a lot to do with where we find value, where our values come from. The deity is called the 8 Vasus, and those 8 Vasus have to do with, they actually have to do with the 5 elements and the 3 gunas kind of simultaneous. 5 elements and then the 3 worlds is actually how it's said. Earth, sky, and heaven. So how the 5 elements, which are the building blocks of life, are created through 3 worlds, which earth has to do with our body, the sky has to do with our mind, and the cosmos has to do with our soul. So literally we can arrange the 5 elements to create a meaningful life on earth, a form. Then there's also the attachment to it, because everything of the earth and our body brings also the most attachment. Or we can create an internal structure with the 5 elements that's more related to things like compassion and emotional stability in the mind. Or we can create it on a soul level as well, where we connect with that higher spiritual purpose. So Lord Shiva creates on all those realms, and so do you. Everything that you create physically emanates from a spiritual place, then into a psychological feeling place, and then on a tangible worldly place. So it's not just about wealth, it's also about values and what you value the most. A big lesson for this next 30 days and this new moon in Capricorn. So in the midst of that, we're also, by this time next month, by the time the next new moon comes around, Mars is about to join Saturn in Scorpio, which is going to initiate a time of about 7 or 8 months with Mars and Saturn for the most part in Scorpio, which is going to really kind of initiate a sort of riot in our in that sign of Scorpio where Saturn has been. So it's kind of like there's been this sort of frozen lake with Saturn and Scorpio for the last year. Like a little more than the last year, we've been trying to sort of manage and control some things. Expect for some explosiveness to happen around February 20th, February 21st, 22nd. That's upcoming, and during this next 30-day cycle, and we'll also get a lot of discipline to go in and face that. I'll do an upcoming video about that Saturn-Mars conjunction in Scorpio. But we also have Mercury and Venus are pretty closely joined in Sagittarius at that time. They've been there for a while. Mercury actually went retrograde, and now he's moving forward, and both Mercury and Venus are in Sagittarius, which brings a lot of creativity and, you know, especially things that are creative as they align with our principles and our teachers and our teachings. It's been a good time to, like, study things such as astrology and inspiring, Vidyas and Vedangas, things that actually really connect you with the truth. It's been a good time to really study those things, and it'll remain a good time to study those things. And we still have this very prominent Jupiter-Rahu in Leo, still very close, within a degree of each other. As I said even about a month ago, we're going to have Rahu and Jupiter tracking very close to each other for much of February, for much of January into February, and they're still very close. Jupiter is like 2737, and Rahu is like 2750 on that new moon. And this is based on the true node, not the mean node. So we still have some very, a lot of, changes and confusion and power struggles happening within ourselves, within the world. We see it in politics. We see it in a lot of places with Jupiter, Rahu very close together in Leo, which is the sign of the king, the kingdom, who's going to be powerful, where does our power lie, what inspires us, how are those inspirations kind of dogmatic rather than practical. Those themes will continue to be prominent. But again, starting on February 8th, and for the next, 30 days or so, it's a time to really go inward, face your inner fears. Notice your desire to want to control situations and control people, especially. One of the things about Capricorn, and it's not a very flattering portrayal, but, Capricorn is materialistic, not just wanting money, but I mean sensing that everything, and it's the part of us that senses that everything in our world is an extension of us. And what that actually means can be, difficult to manage. Like, for instance, our family. When we start looking at people in our family or our friends or especially other people as extensions of us, then we see them as a means to an end. And this is when we start trying to control and subtly manipulate them, often for their own good, because we're worried about them. So the Capricorn part of us is where we need to let go of our attachment to other people, and especially the agenda that we want for them. That's what we say, but it's actually for us, because we're afraid of losing them, because we're afraid what it might be like if they outgrow us, for instance. Even this thing that families get into all the time. We've all had to evolve beyond our family unit at some point if we were going to be independent. Sometimes it's easy. Sometimes if our parents and our family unit was tolerant and open, we didn't have to struggle against such a difficult image that they projected onto us. But some people never get beyond it because they're still viewed by the family unit as, oh, that's Rebecca, she's this way, and maybe Rebecca isn't that way anymore. And because Rebecca doesn't want to upset the family unit and upset her way of fitting in with the family, she pretends she's a certain way, but she actually isn't anymore. And then when she tries to evolve beyond the projection of the family, there's resistance and there's jealousy and all of these issues that come up, both around people trying to keep us in our little box and us wanting to keep others in their little box, is implicit in Capricorn. So, they say that those, you have to be ever vigilant to those people in your life who are jealous of your evolution, right? Those people who would be jealous of your evolution, who can no longer control you by their words or their passive-aggressive games, you have to be vigilant of, because if your evolution says something about them and their values, then you have to be careful of that whole kind of thing. That's a sort of negative side of Capricorn, and I always have to tell people who have like a Capricorn ascendant or a lot of planets in Capricorn to be careful of this. And the reason this happens is because of what the Capricorn person gets out of it, because you're an extension of me and you're an extension of my values, and I have you in this little box that's comfortable for me, and if you evolve beyond that, what does that say about me? Like, for instance, if I'm in a fearful little box, let's say it's like your family unit, and your family unit has this rigid kind of philosophy, let's say it's about a religion or something, and they see you as part of it, and you're suddenly like, you know, I'm now into this other thing, and they all try to like keep you where you are, try to keep you in that box. It says nothing, it's not about you, it's about them. It's because what happens if you now evolve beyond their safe world vision? And again, this is that safety of Saturn. Well, I'm safe in this vision. I'm safe in this family structure. And part of that safety in the family structure is seeing that you're this part of it. And if you're my son, and I've given you my values, and now you've rebelled against my values, which in fact it's not that. It's just that you're evolving independently. But if someone can't unhook their claws from you, and they see your personal growth as some sort of commentary on them and their values and the value they have invested in you, then this is where power struggles develop in families. This is really a shadow side of Capricorn that everyone has to be careful of, and it's because of that insecurity. Like, okay, well, we were raised, Hindu, and now you're evolving into things where it's not that same thing anymore. So if you change, that's somehow a reflection on us, or whatever it is. So we all have to watch that kind of. This is the kind of shadow manipulation of Capricorn that we need to be careful of, rather than being able to flow with time gracefully, to not be attached to some version of not just who we are, but who those in our life, what they represent. Watch that. This is something, it's not talked about very much about Capricorn, but it definitely is a big thing where you see people have this investment in others. This like, you're an extension of my values. You don't live for you, you're an extension of my values. And often the justification is, well, I'm just worried about you. You see this a lot with parents. And because I'm worried about you, I'm trying to control you. It's just because I'm worried. And again, this brings in things like money. You see this a lot of times with young people trying to get out of the control and the grip of the family unit. Young people who are in college and they're still taking their family's money. And so if you're taking the family's money, the family has a right to say something about who you are and what you're doing. And again, not until we stop living off of their values and the value they're giving us through their money can we really be independent. So again, all of this is all kind of Saturn, Capricorn stuff. So this is how it comes to play out in the real world often. And it's not just in your family, it's also in like work, and they have an investment in you and what you think about their values, and how you, and look at yourself too. Don't just look at how it happens to you. Notice how you have an investment in your friends and what they think, and how what they think is a reflection of your values. They start rejecting something that you think is valuable. You have to look at that and see whether or not you still want to make a commitment and be committed to that person or that environment. Again, and that's what Saturn is. We only have so much time, we only have so much investment of and allocation of energy. And if you want to see how this plays out for your sign, you can join my member site. Only $1 you can get 14 days of forecast, and also get the forecast for your sign to see how this Capricorn cycle will affect you. So ponder these things. It's big for the next 30 days, and whenever Sun Moon come together, it really brings the the power of consciousness, which is the Sun, and the feeling nature to reflect that with the Moon, and initiates that cycle. So